Hello and welcome back to the Football Radio Show. Dave Hewitt here with Casey Mallon as we continue our preview of the NFL teams by division. Up next, it's the NFC South. Casey, we'll start this one off with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They were fourth place last year with a record of 7-9. And last offseason, this team really did a great job acquiring Vincent Jackson and then in the draft getting running back Doug Martin. And these guys really produced. It was an exciting season. They underachieved a little bit disappointing, maybe in particular at the quarterback position. But this is an up-and-coming, exciting offense. Casey, talk.
Yeah, last year, the first year, the Greg Schiano regime kind of putting his stamp on this squad. And you're right, they were inconsistent, up and down. They would play good for stretches, then play poor for stretches. Obviously, hit the jackpot on Vincent Jackson, 72 catches last year, 8 touchdowns. This guy is a matchup problem down the field. And Doug Martin, man, they really found a gem with this guy. If you drafted him late in your fantasy league last year, that's not going to be the case this year, brother. That dude is going top 5. But they really just need to be more consistent overall, and a lot of that does fall on Josh Freeman's shoulders. We've seen him play great for pockets and then play terrible. He's got to step it up, and what I like that they did this offseason in the draft, they went out and got Mike Glennon to put just a little bit of pressure on him. I think Josh Freeman can handle that pressure. I think he is an up-and-coming quarterback in this league. But overall, this team's got to find their identity by finishing games, by finishing drives, just being more complete and not letting the same mental mistakes happen over and over again.
Yeah, and Josh Freeman, like you said, a lot lies on his shoulder. When you got a guy like Vincent Jackson out there, on the other side, Mike Williams, who's also a young and exciting up-and-coming receiver, deep at receiver with Tyquan Underwood, Kevin Ogletree, Derek Haven, Chris Owusu. There's a lot of weapons here for this team to work with moving forward. So I believe Josh Freeman will step it up. He'll have himself an excellent season. Okay, so let's move this thing over to the defensive side of the football. Last year, this was a very strange defense in the sense that awesome against the run, number 1 against the run, and then just terrible, the last in the league against the pass. How do you see this defense shaping up this offseason, Casey?
Well, one of the problems they have is they play in this NFC South, so you're going against Cam Newton, Drew Brees, and Matt Ryan, brother.
Exactly.
That is tough.
Fireworks.
Yeah, they get thrown on. They did give up a lot of points, but what was supposed to be a strength in that defensive front line just hasn't been the case. Gerald McCoy's been hurt. Bowers hasn't lived up to it yet, and they lose Michael Bennett, their sack leader, to Seattle. So if you're not getting it done up front, what do? You get it done on the backside. They go out and get Dashon Goldson from San Francisco. They go out and they get Darrelle Revis from the New York Jets. You add that to Mark Barron, who was one of the bright spots of that secondary last year. Now you're talking about making a deficiency one of your stronger points. And, man, if those guys can play anything like their names have done in the past, this is going to be a different defense.
Yeah, not to mention they addressed the secondary in the draft as well, Casey. In the second round, they get Jonathan Banks, cornerback, so another one to groom for the future there. Yeah, they'll be turning that secondary right around pretty fast.
And then late in the draft, they get Akeem Spence, William Golson, and Steven Means, add a little beef, add some more guys to rotate on that front four. I expect a lot better out of Tampa Bay this year. Second year under Schiano. They kind of know what weapons they have. If they get that defense shored up, they're going to be able to compete for an NFC South title, brother.
You got it.
Speaking of teams looking to compete for an NFC South title, just a couple years removed from that distinct title, the New Orleans Saints. Dave, couldn't have had a worse offseason possible for these guys last year.
Yeah.
Oof. And could not have had a worse defense. So what do? They go out and bring their head coach back, Sean Payton, who dude, is going to have a huge, immediate, positive impact on there. And they go get the fat Rob Ryan out of Dallas. And they had a ton of injuries on defense last year. If this defense can do anything this season, bro, I expect the Saints to be one of the elite teams in the NFL. Speaking of elite, let's go ahead and start on the offensive side of the ball, and it doesn't get much more elite than Drew Brees.
Yeah, no question about it. I mean, this is one of the most dynamic offenses in the league. They did lose running back Chris Ivory in the offseason, as well as Devery Henderson, and tackled Jermad Bushrod. So a couple of key losses there. But
that might actually help that running back situation. It was almost a little too crowded back there.
No, I absolutely agree with you. I think putting a little bit more on Mark Ingram, and obviously if he can stay healthy, him and Pierre Thomas are a nice bruising tandem there. And then, of course, you've got the ultra-dynamic Darren Sproles, draws, screens, obviously return game. He's
Dave,
very dynamic.
Lots of former Chargers making plays for these NFC South teams, brother. What's going on there?
Yeah, well, we used to draft well, just not retain the players, right? Okay, but obviously Jimmy Graham is going to be a big factor, I think, this year moving forward. And Marquise Colston, Lance Moore, Joe Morgan. This is a deep and talented team. I expect with the guidance back of Sean Payton in the mix there, that this team settles into being one of the top scoring offenses in the league.
All right. The big problem, besides all the bounty gate and all that stuff last year, was the defense. 31st in points given up, over 28 a game. Last in total yards per game, 31st in pass yards game, and last against the run, dude. All bad. All bad.
It doesn't get much worse. I can't see them getting any worse. Like you said, they bring in Rob Ryan. I really feel like he's going to give them an edge that they lacked last year, an intensity, and they have to get better. And if they can just get somewhere from like 32nd up to 20th or 25th or something, I think that the offense will be back in rhythm, and that'll be enough defense. They need to make timely stops and occasional turnovers and get the ball back to Brees and the guys, and this team is going to be back in serious contention.
And that's kind of what they've done the last few years. You know, last year I think was definitely an anomaly just with all the bad stuff that happened in the offseason. And losing a head coach like Sean Payton that is so involved with the offense, that was too much to overcome. It just all the bad stuff stacked on each other. And like I said, I expect these guys to be right back in the mix.
Likewise. Okay, let's move this along, Casey. Second place last year in the NFC South was the Carolina Panthers with a record of 7-9. This Carolina team, obviously last year was the second year in Cam Newton's time in the NFL. First year he exploded onto the scene, just hitting Steve Smith like you would not believe, like nobody could cover him. And last year, a little bit of a regression there, a little bit of a sophomore slump. Other quarterbacks got all the spotlight. I'm looking for Cam Newton to rebound for that. Sometimes the body language we've talked about wasn't quite there. He wants to be a leader when they're winning and when they're losing. He needs to rally his guys. Casey, what do you think about the development of Cam Newton and this Carolina Panthers offense in general?
They have the opportunity to be one of the best offenses. It seemed like it took them so long to get that run game going last year, and it wasn't what we expected that it was going to be. I mean, Cam Newton was their leading rusher last year. That's bad.
Yeah, bad.
You know, with D'Angelo Williams and Jonathan Stewart, you figured they would be able to get that going, and Mike Tolbert comes home for a sweetheart deal. Another former Charger making plays all over this NFC
Spread
South.
around. Hey, all these guys beat the Chargers last year, too. They swept the Chargers. Side story there. Another guy I love in the running back, I just want to throw him in there right now, Kenyon Barner. I thought he was very undervalued in the draft. They got him late in the draft there, and, man, he could be explosive.
He is a speedster, dude, and that is just another weapon on this team that can take it to the house on any given play. But it all comes down to Cam Newton. Like we said, first year, everything's going great for him. He's shining bright. Last year, didn't go so well. And you mentioned the body language. I want to see how the dude responds now. He had to walk through that fire and find out that, hey, man, I got to work. I got to do this stuff. It is going to be on me. I want to see how he responds to that pressure. And if he does respond like I think he's going to, then this team is going to be right in the mix as well.
Another thing I think, Casey, is obviously we talked about Steve Smith. I did in the intro there, and we know he's basically unguardable. He just continues to be impressive every single season. You think he might drop off, he doesn't. But the rest of the guys, that's where I'm looking for a little more contribution. Brandon LaFell, I thought he was going to blow up last year. He had moments, he flashes. And then they also brought in Dominic Hickson and Ted Ginn, both guys that haven't really established themselves in this league, but have a good chance here in this system. So it's going to be exciting.
Yeah, and Greg Olsen got out of the gates pretty slow last year, too. He really came on towards the end of the season, and nobody wanted to play these guys as the season was going towards the end in December and January last year. So if they can pick up where they left off, some exciting things here. But, Dave, the thing that's been holding these guys back for the last couple years has been the defensive side of the ball. They got to get that fixed up.
Yeah, they were terrible at stopping the run, especially up the middle. They had issues with the linebackers, and they got Kuechly in there. He shores up that quite a bit. And then in this offseason, I really like what they did in the draft. They draft star Lotulelei with their first-round pick and Kawan Short, defensive tackle, with their second pick. So they look to get stronger. And Lotulelei, I mean, this guy is big and strong. So hopefully what they've done there in the last couple of drafts is really solidify that defense against the run. So I look for that to be a significant improvement for these guys.
Yeah, great news that they got that run defense squared away. But, Dave, in this NFC South, you better be able to stop the pass if you want to win games. All right, speaking of the pass, let's go ahead and move to the defending NFC champs, the Atlanta Falcons. They finished last year 13-3. Matty Ice really becoming one of the better quarterbacks in the league. However, he's got the same amount of playoff wins as Tony Romo, but viewed in a very different light. But we're not talking about the Cowboys, but all right. And, Dave, he's got maybe the best receiver combo in the league with Roddy-White and Julio Jones. Julio Jones becoming a big-time playmaker in the league. Harry Douglas also in that mix is there. And they talked Tony G into coming back, coming off one of his best seasons ever, dude. The guy doesn't age. He just gets better. And they made one subtraction on offense, but they added a guy that you're pretty fond of too.
Yeah, obviously, like you mentioned, this is an awesome passing attack here, but really they struggled to run the ball last year consistently. And so out with Michael Turner and in with Steven Jackson. In addition to that, they went younger on the offensive line. Tyson Clabo's gone. Todd McClure, their longtime center, gone. They've got younger guys to replace them now. So they're looking for hopefully an upgrade there at the line. But Steven Jackson comes in and paired up with Jacquizz Rodgers, who I thought really came on the second half of last season, got stronger. I think you've got a real versatile tandem of backs that are both receivers out of the backfield as well as runners. And in particular, Steven Jackson versus Michael Turner, he's a much better receiver out of the backfield. So I'm really excited about that tandem of running backs they got. That's going to be exciting to watch.
Yeah, and you know what, Dave? I actually expect Michael Turner to show up on one of these teams that's contending somewhere towards the end of training camp, and I expect him to have a big contribution on one of those squads. He had the pulled groin in both legs, didn't really talk about it.
Yeah.
Like that. They had trouble with the offensive line too, but I definitely think Turner's going to be back.
And he doesn't have a lot of wear on the tires. You know, for the first 4 years of his career or so, he was backing up LT only maybe 80 or 100 carries each season. So he has way less carries than Steven Jackson.
Yeah, he's going to get picked up somewhere. All right, let's go ahead and move this over to the defensive side of the ball. They brought in Ray Edwards. That didn't really work. John Abraham, he's been there forever. He's gone now. They bring in OCU Manure, kind of the same as John Abraham type of player, supposedly in some talks with Richard Seymour there. They have a pretty solid linebacker in Sean Witherspoon. Other than that, they've added a bunch of young guys there. Nobody really standing out there. But that secondary, Dave, it got a major overhaul for their 8 draft picks, including the first 2 spent on that defensive secondary alone.
Yeah, the overhaul is pretty substantial in that secondary. They get rid of Brent Grimes and Dante Robinson, Chris Owens, Chris Hope, all gone. And obviously, like you mentioned, they addressed it through the draft with 6 of the first 7 draft picks on defense, in particular drafting with their first 2 picks, cornerbacks, Desmond Trufant and Robert Alford. They've got Desmond Trufant basically penciled in as a starter going into the season, and they're looking for a serious upgrade there in the secondary. As we mentioned, there's a lot of great passers in this division, and they're going to need to shore up that secondary quickly. Of course, Asante Samuel's still there, the veteran leader. He's going to have to really bring these guys together and get them really playing on the same page. And like you mentioned, they lose John Abraham, but they bring in Osi Umenyiora. I kind of look at that as a pretty good trade-off, maybe a slight upgrade. Umenyiora still got something left in the tank as he was kind of in that rotation with the Giants there. And then there's another guy I have to mention here, Casey, because it's a guy that we're all rooting for, and it's Brian Banks, a guy who was wrongly accused and who spent a significant amount of time behind bars, really derailed his NFL career. He's on this roster right now, and we're hoping Brian Banks is able to make the team. That will be a heck of a story, and he's a pretty cool dude too.
Yeah, seems like a great guy off the field. Hopefully he gets this turned around and actually gets some of those NFL downs. That would be sweet to see. You know, last year, Dave, this team came out 8-0, won some very close games, a lot of last-second dramatics there. I think they're going to be a strong team again this year. I can't see them running away with the division. Like I said, I really like the Saints coming back with a full offseason with their coach, and I just don't think you can get that lucky 2 years in a row. They address their areas of need, but As we've seen year to year, man, it's a whole new ball game each year. So I think they're going to be competitive and still solid, but I don't know if they get the South title again.
Yeah, well, they're going to have to earn it. I think all the teams vying for that title have improved, including the Falcons, too. They seem to be better. They might be better, but without as good of a record. So we'll see how that pans out. But, yeah, the division is going to be highly competitive.
Just a few short weeks away, brother. I cannot wait.
Okay, that is going to do it for our NFC South preview. Up next, we will be previewing the AFC North. Thanks for listening, and don't forget to like us on Facebook. Follow us on Twitter at FootballRS, and subscribe to the free podcast on iTunes. Thanks for listening. Football Radio Show. We've got you covered. For Casey, I am Dave, and we are out of here.